Alright, so let's do a little brief guide on sFlora and how to get it set up and to a point to where you can generate some object layers for your terrain builder project with it. There's a few things that you're going to need in order to do this. One of those things is going to be sFlora itself. So, those of you guys are not familiar with it, it's a program that was built, I believe, by one of the guys from the Arma community named Stacker. It's available at this uh, site. You can download it. Make sure you get the latest version, latest release. The time of this one, it is version 0.9.12a. And just go ahead and download that and go through the process of installing it. And that link is going to be in the description. Another thing that's going to be in the description that'll prove to be helpful is going to be this guide reference here. TBS PNG is tree, bush, stump. Somebody from the community contributed to this project where it's got a visual reference of all the Chinaris and all the Livonia trees. I'm in the process of putting one together similar to this for Sakals, but you could pretty much use this with any trees, bushes, rocks, stuff like that that you have, whether it be vanilla or custom assets. It's all the same process pretty much. You're gonna also want to, you know, have a terrain builder project, of course. There's some map frame properties that you're gonna need the details of prior to jumping into this. Uh, just close this out, and we'll go over those in a second. But you're gonna need your map frame properties, and it's gonna help to have a custom mask set up. So one of the things that I'll be using throughout this is a custom surface mask that was made in Photoshop, and I got some videos on how to do that process as well. There's some very helpful guides throughout the map making community that you can follow, whether you got Photoshop or GIMP or whatever method that you're using, whether it be an OSM mask or uh, one of the OTB masks. Uh, it'll work pretty much all the same, but you want to get a more complex one. You can pretty much do this process with created shapes from your polygons from within here. So, if I wanted to create my polygons on Terrain Builder, export those shapes, and then use those uh, from your shapes to imagery, you could use that as well. However you want to do it. Uh, but this is the method that I'll be using today, so we can get some pretty good definition of our output from sFlora. So I've created this layer will be a bushes mask, and it doesn't matter what color you use for these masks right here. This could be set to your actual surface mask, or it could be set to whatever color you want to use it for the sFlora process. And this will be for the trees. Uh, and you could put these both together. You can use your whole surface mask. They don't have to be separate uh, images to work for the program. It's just kind of how I have it set up for this tutorial. So I'll go ahead and close that for now and get started here. We'll open up sFlora. We're going to create a new project for this one. We'll just call it sFlora guide. We're going to set the project folder to an output, or what our project folder would be For this one, I'm just going to set it to this output uh, folder that I've created. But normally, you would want to, set this probably in your P drive along with your terrain builder project and have it set up to where you have its own source folder. So mine is set up in my source, in my project, on my P drive. I've got an sFlora folder here for it. I've got an output folder, and this is my project folder. So for now, we'll just use this one, sFlora 1. Now this is the map frames part that you're going to need to reference your map frame properties. So we'll go in here to your map frames, go to properties, open this up. You don't need to change anything in here. We're going to go to samplers, and then we're going to grab this information that we need from in here. So you can see that it needs the tiles and row count. Well, correction, you do need to change something in here because most of the time if you have an adjusted desired overlap pixels value, which most cases you probably do in order to have good map frames, you're going to want to set that to whatever you have determined it to be. Um, there's a helpful guide out there that one of the people from the community has put together, tree for map frame properties calculator. That's really helpful to figure out what your map frames need to be. If you don't have that already, you can go and figure that out on here. But we won't go into that much on this one. So that is available. I'll drop that in the description as well if you need it. So we're just going to change this desired overlap to what we want it to be. This will adjust our values here. Now we want the tiles in row. It's going to be 16. Source image resolution pixels. And this is from our sat map. So for this project, I have it as a smaller one, 5120. We're going to set that in there. Our resolution by meters to pixels is going to be 1. We'll set that in there. And then your Y offset, and X offset, your easting is going to be defined in the locations tab. So northing and easting is already set, 0 to, I believe that's 200,000. That's going to be defaulted pretty much on there. So don't need to mess with that. Output version terrain builder, that's what we want. And then the output folder will go into this folder that I created here. Like, create another one, and we'll just call this one output. And we're going to save that. It's going to open up sFlora for you. It's a pretty simple program. Play around with it, get the feel of how it moves and operates. We'll just go ahead and close this. We don't need that anymore. All right. So a few things that we're going to have to set up on the project for the sFlora. One of the first things that you want to do is you're going to need to import your template libraries into the objects database. And this is going to allow you to be able to select from those template libraries which trees, bushes, and rocks and various assets that you want to have this be processed through. So we're just going to go down to our terrain builder project folder. We're going to go to source. We're going to go to terrain builder. Open that up. And we're going to go to our template libs and find the ones that we want to bring in. So for this one, I'm just going to use the regular Chinaris trees and the Chinaris bushes. Plants bush TML, that's our template library file. We're going to grab those two, open, and those are going to be imported into here. So now we have a list of all those P3D assets that are included in that library. Up here in groups, you'll have them separated by their libraries. Okay, now you don't need to do anything else on this object database form for that. Once you have yours selected, you can go ahead and close that out. That's going to be there for later. Now, we are going to import our mask into the project here. It's going to pop up with a warning. You may need to delete the previous mask tiles before new import. Delete them. Yes. Now we're going to navigate to our surface mask images that we're going to be using. So go and find those. And we'll go ahead and grab these from where we want them. I have these set up in a separate folder here. So we'll grab the tree ones first. This is going to bring in the image. This might not be the best example, but it'll work. So now that we have this mask imported into here, we are going to click New Color Mapping. We're going to give it a name. You can name it whatever you want to. For this one, I'm just going to put this as forestry, or how about trees. And you can get however, complex that you want for this. This is just going to cover the entire mask here. But if you want variation, let's say you got different trees in a different area where they're isolated by the region, that's fine. You can set up multiple mappings for that. We're just going to do this. So now that we have that created, we're going to select it, make sure that it's highlighted in blue. We're going to click one of these tiles. We'll just go ahead and click the second tile in the line. This operates like this. We did not know, from 0, 0, working its way down and over. So we'll click the second tile, 0, 2. We'll be presented with that tile. And with this still selected, we're going to right click this, select color, and click the color that we want it to be set to. You'll see that it's worked when you get the RGB value over here. And this little tile selected in here. Now let's say you have a multiple, the mask that you're using has multiple colors on it. This one doesn't. It's just got the one and the transparency. You can click the other colors that you want this mapping to ignore. Right click and add ignored color. That's going to add as many colors that you want it to ignore in there. Your surface mask should only have up to 6 materials per tile. So you want to keep that in mind going forward. So now that that's set, we can go ahead and press M. That's going to back us out to the entire image. We're going to click this plus sign here, add layer. Now we're going to want forest on these. There's some different layer settings here: forest, border, and undergrowth. Forest is going to be for anything that you want placed on top of the, filled in with your, density. Uh, it's going to surround any kind of color images, values that you have in these tiles. Border is going to sort of outline that area of what would be selected in the forest. And undergrowth, to my knowledge, is primarily used for like, excuse me, setting in rocks. So we'll leave that alone. We're just going to click forest. It's going to pop up with this little box here, and you can start selecting the assets that you want. Now remember, these are grouped to however your libraries are set up. We're going to select plants and trees, and this is where the image is going to help us select which ones we want. Okay, now go ahead and find the ones that you want to use, or if you already know which ones you want, based off of your modded asset trees or whatever you have, go ahead and select those from the list. So for this tutorial, I'm just going to be selecting all of this type of tree right here. I believe these are oak trees, and we'll just select all of those with the similar names there. Okay. If you have a hard time, you can always filter it, and that'll give you only the ones that you want. So we'll go down here. Mind you that these do have, some bushes. These are for like stumps and fallen. I believe that's a destroyed B, D, T prefixes. And you could check those out here on the image as well. Okay. So we're going to be grabbing from all the T ones. Maybe throw a couple of the stumps in the mix. Just going to go ahead and select all of these. Okay, you have those selected. And let's say that we want to, throw some more in the mix there. Let's just throw a couple of these bushes in there as well. Okay. Now that we have the ones we want selected, you can always click this show only selected, and it's gonna bring up only the ones that we have selected there. This is gonna help because there's a quick way to go through this without having to go and change each and every value. So go ahead and do that. And now, once we have these up here, we're going to go ahead and change the probability for all these. So if you just left click and drag your mouse and select all these, you can highlight them all. This is already set to the probability. This is going to give us a value of how likely is it that these are going to show up in those in that color map that we have set out. So we'll just set this to like 65. And for the bushes, we'll give it a different value. We'll say 35. Okay. Now, the min distance is going to be how far is it going to be away from each other with all of these different types of selections. So let's say we want to have them 10 meters apart at the minimum. We'll go ahead and change that to what we want it. Click set. It's going to set all these in here. Let's say you want the bushes a little bit further spread apart. Go ahead and put 25 for those. Set it. Max size, min size. You just want to keep these at 1. You don't want to adjust those. Um, and they can be adjusted in your project or whatever you want to do to get some variation. But for this process, do not change these. It's going to give you a hard time. The pitch we'll keep at 0. This is, to define, do we want these slanted or anything like that? And we don't. The max height, min height is what we'll be adjusting. And go ahead and set these to 100. And that'll be for all of them. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is going to give us a full scale model. Could be a little confusing given the max size, min size, and whatever you have in, but it's my understanding. And I might be wrong, but I've always set these to 100, and it's worked for me. When I didn't, it hasn't worked so well. So now that we have those defined the way we want them, let's just change this variation up a little bit. And let's say that these first few of them are going to be a different probability. We'll say 45 of these with some variation. Okay. Now that you have everything defined in here, you can go ahead and press close. It's going to pop up in here with your forest layer, and it'll tell you how many objects you have selected. So we have 19 different P3D assets in this layer that it's going to be pulling from. Excuse me. We have a little slider here that's going to adjust the percentage of how much of that tile that we have selected is going to be filled in. It will have a place value where it's going to try to place this an estimated amount of objects. So if we set it at 5.62, it's going to try to place about 67 objects in this tile. And we know that's not a lot, so let's just go ahead and crank that up a bit. You don't need to max it out. You can try it, see how it works out for you. But there's a happy medium somewhere in here, somewhere around 55 or so, depending on, which tile sample you're pulling from. We know that this is not that filled in with our color sample. Um, according to our color sample, it's only about 1.18% of this tile is the actual color sample out of 100. So we'll just go ahead and put this up a little bit. We'll say 58.9 to place 707 estimated count in this single tile. Okay. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and generate placement and see if this works for us. Now, it'll give you a little time spent down here and objects placed 86. So we know that it worked. It wasn't quite as many as, what our estimated amount was going to be, but it did place some of them, so we know that it worked. Now, you're going to have to mess around with these values a little bit, see if you can get the pool that you want. It's not going to be a one-time thing. You're going to have to play around with it a little bit to get the amount that you want. Okay. We can go ahead and check this out. And we know that it created 86, so this button down here, open output, is going to open our output folder for us. We see trees. That's the name of the color mapping that we assigned for it. And we know that it only did one tile here for us because that's all we have selected. And this works good for testing out what your pool is going to be like. Okay, so this was the sample file. And we'll go ahead and load this in just to kind of give us an idea of what we ended up with. Let me just get some of these out of the way since we already have some on this project so we can see what it actually looks like here. Should be good. Okay, so we have an empty area that I've cleared out on here just so we could see what's going on. Now we're gonna go over here. You're gonna want to create a object layer here for this. Okay, it's not gonna create one on its own, so let's just go ahead and give it a layer so it can dump those into. And with that selected, we'll go ahead and up here, import objects, pick files, and we'll navigate to our output folder. We'll grab the text file there. Now for this, you are going to want to click advanced options. Okay. You want to leave it at relative default. But you do want to have this selected, even though it says that it's gonna, you want this selected. Okay. Click OK. It's gonna pop those into place. So you see that we now have some trees that is brought in based off of our mask. And it looks pretty spot on according to. And we can go ahead and take a look at what these look like. You're going to be doing a little bit of testing. And the way that it works for sFlora doing that first sample tile is just, it's for testing purposes. You can run the whole entire surface mask if you wanted to at once and have it generate the whole thing for you as opposed to just doing the one. But if you want to get a better feel for how it's going to come out, whether, maybe you don't like how those trees look. Maybe you don't like the values that you set to it. Maybe it's not enough trees. Maybe it's too many. You could play around with that, with those probabilities and distances and parameters. So we know that this one worked um, according to our surface tile selection. It looks like it got it pretty good. Maybe you could fill it in a little bit more, but for the most part, it's not too bad. So we know that that worked. We'll just go ahead and tab over to this again. So there are a couple workarounds, and I haven't found one yet without closing this down. You don't need to save anything in here. It's auto save. So we'll just close this down. We're going to open sFlora one more time. Okay. Open our project. And we're doing this because we don't want that single tile selected. We want to do it on the whole thing this time. The only way that I've found to do that is just closing the program and reopening it so it doesn't have that tile that we initially selected limited to. Okay. So we'll go ahead, increase this a little bit. We'll say 75% this time. We're just going to go ahead and click generate placement. This is going to run through all tiles. This one has 256. You see that it took about 4 seconds and that it placed about 20,472 exactly. So we'll go ahead and open our output, navigate to our folder, and this time you see that it's generated a text file for each tile that we have to our map, at least the ones that it's covered. Okay, so if there was a color sample pulled from any of these tiles, then it's created a text file for it. Some of these might be large based off of more color in that area. Some of them might be small based off of maybe only a hint of it. As you can see, this one only has 1 KB file size, and it's only produced 15 trees in that area. Okay. One of our bigger ones here. This one's got 296 trees in that tile. Okay, so we know that we got a pull from it, that everything is worked as we wanted it to. Go ahead and minimize this, bring up our terrain builder project. Give me 1 second as I create a workaround for this because I don't want to lose my existing layer here. I'm just going to go ahead and export this layer that I have. Just so I can save it for later and I can get rid of it for the sake of this tutorial here. Okay, so I'll get rid of this just so we can take a look and see how it actually comes out. And close down bulldozer. Okay, so now we can see, I got shrubs on there too. Now we can see that we don't have any tree object layers on here at all. It's pretty much bare. And minus I've got some shrubs and stuff on here too, and some other areas that are populated. Don't mind those. We'll go ahead and delete this. Or you know what? We'll clear it and just get rid of the objects that are there and retain the actual layer because we're going to need that layer. Alright, with that layer selected, we're going to import our objects, pick our files. We should be at the output folder already. For this, we're just going to select all of these. Click open. It's going to tell you how many files you got there. We got 191 files that it's going to import. Advanced options, relative, default, okay. Give it a second. It's going to process all those trees into place. Okay. So here we are. We got our trees in place. If this pops up on your screen, you know you're in good shape. You zoom in, you look, okay, we got all the trees here in our areas that we have it defined. Some of them might not be filled in, and we know that that's going to be on account of either our mask wasn't defined in that. This one was, so it might be because of our parameters, but we know that it colored it in pretty good, pretty thoroughly on a lot of these areas. So we'll go ahead. I'll just save this. Could save it, just in case. Sometimes it likes to crash. Open up Bulldozer, take a look and see what we got. Should open up pretty quickly on a smaller map. If you have a larger map, let's say you're doing a 2480, it's going to take a long time. You probably already have noticed that. But now we can see what we've generated from our sFlora. Okay, so all of these oak trees here were just generated by our last output. We could fly around, take a look and see. And if you're not happy with it, you can always go back and make your adjustments as needed. Play around with it a bit till you get the desired results. Okay, but we just saved ourselves a bunch of time by not having to go through and manually place these. And you can always get a pretty, complex definition, a variation of what you want added into here. We didn't select any downed trees or fallen stumps or anything like that, but if we did, those will be included in this layer. And we know that we added in some small pine trees here and spread them out pretty far. And there they are. So that's our probability and minimum distances coming into play. Okay. So now that we know that that looks good, we'll go ahead and close this down. Okay. That's pretty much it. That covers the process. You're going to do the same thing, you know. Let's say you wanted to do the bushes or something. Like I said, I just got two separate masks here for the process, but you can do it all on one if you wanted to. So this one's got some different layers on it. Anytime that you import this mask though and you change this import, you're going to need to change this. So just be mindful of that if you're using a color, different colored masks to do this process. You really only need one. It just depends on how you do it. So we'll import that. Sometimes it'll give you this error. Okay. You don't need to mind that. That's fine. Go ahead and repeat the process. You may need to delete. It's going to pop up for you. Okay. Now, we're done with the trees, but we could always go through and redefine these. Let's say we want the trees. This one. I'm going to select that. Ignored colors. Blue. White. That's just for our trees, which are already done. We don't need to worry about that. We're going to do a new color mapping for the bushes. And you could put them all in the same layer if you wanted to blend the trees and bushes. This is just for the sake of the tutorial. Okay. With this selected, blue highlight again, have it selected. We're going to go in. We're going to select our color. It's blue. We know that it's blue because it's got the RGB set here on it. We're going to add this orange to our ignored colors and the white to our ignored colors. Turn that off. Once we're done with that, we can press the plus sign, add your layer. For this one, we'll say that it's going to be the border. Border our forest layer with bushes. Okay. We'll just go ahead and select some random ones out of the bush. And we'll put B underscore. We'll just grab all the bushes. Just so you can get a good idea of what it is doing for us. And we can see some of the variation. Oops. Grab all those. Same process here. Don't need to click this because we got them all here. But we can. We're going to select them all. Change the probability to, let's say, 75 for all of them. Minimum distance, we're going to have them about 5 meters apart. Oops. Pardon that. Didn't change the probability there. 75. Minimum distance, it's going to be about 5 meters apart. Max size, min size, all set to 1. 0 on the pitch. And our max height And min height is going to be set to 100. And you can play around with this, see what all the different settings do, get a better feel for it. Now that we have those selected, we'll close this. We have our things defined. We've got 23 assets selected for this layer. We'll deselect these trees because we don't want those on this run, just the bush border. We'll increase this up, let's say 45. Again, it's gonna try to place about 11,000 objects here in the blue for this tile. Okay. Since we already went through the process of having to close this down, we'll just do it again so that we can get a full pull and not just the one tile. Like I said, you don't need to save the program, it does it already. So everything's ready to go. Go ahead and uncheck this because we don't want the trees again. And we'll generate the placement. So didn't look like it worked out for us that time, but you get the gist of it. Could be that this didn't work on account of the Nord colors. Go ahead and do this. Didn't work for us. But you get the gist of it, man. If you have any questions,